Okay, kiddos, here we go. I am going to show you how to make beef stroganoff. The actual measurements as I cook, it'll just kind of pop up on the screen, but one thing I just want to make sure you understand is that these ingredients right here, these all have to do with the sauce and the amount of noodles. I wouldn't mess with these too much. It's water, flour, beef powder, the sour cream. You don't really want to mess with these, the weights that I give you, until you get really comfortable cooking this, because that might change the flavor of the sauce, and that's kind of what you're used to. These things over here, that's just gonna change how much stuff's actually in it. With that, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Step one, put the sour cream into the pan on medium heat. This is gonna start to melt, you can see. It's gonna start to liquefy some. Now we're gonna go ahead and add the beef powder. Be sure you use a whisk, keep stirring it, okay? Because you don't want this to burn. If it burns, the whole thing is kind of ruined. And you can see it's starting to melt. So we're gonna take the flour, warm water, we're gonna mix them together. Once that's stirred in real good, you're gonna add it, and you're gonna start to stir that in. Now that everything's mixed in smoothly, we're gonna go ahead and put this on low, and we're gonna wait till it just starts to just bubble a little bit, and then just keep it warm. The sauce is pretty much butter for medium-high heat. And we're gonna add onions. So go and have a look. Keep in mind, this is cast iron, and we're on medium-high. This skillet actually retains a lot of heat. But these are gonna be done. I'm gonna put them back in the bowl. Next, butter, and we're gonna saute the mushrooms. Okay. In addition to the butter, we're gonna add the dry sherry, which is optional.
Why you put on the dry sherry?
Just it adds another level of flavor to the mushrooms, because as the alcohol cooks off, there won't be like alcohol in it, but as the alcohol cooks off, it'll concentrate, the mushrooms will absorb that, like there's a little bit of sweetness in that sherry, and it'll just make them that much better. We're gonna cook these until they release their juices, and then we're gonna return them back to the bowl. So now you can see the juices have been released, and it's actually starting to cook down now, and you're starting to see a little bit of searedness on those mushrooms. So what we're gonna do is return them back to their pan, and then without rinsing anything, okay, with all that flavor in there, we're going to start cooking the meat. Now the pan is hot still, and I'm gonna start putting the steak in. We're only gonna put a few pieces in at a time, and make sure that they get charred on all sides. So you don't want to put a whole bunch in if you really want to do kind of above and beyond. You can use any kind of steak that you want. This happens to be filet. All the juices that were in there in the butter from before, sear this steak and try to make it a little bit kind of crunchy. If you kind of zoom in on that right there, honey, you can see like that's what you're looking for, those little crusties. But these little morsels here are going to be absolutely phenomenal when they get into that sauce, covered in pasta, and then your mouth is gonna be like. Okay, so this is the last batch. Look at all this like crusty brown stuff in the bottom of the pan. That is what's really gonna bring us some deep, rich flavor to this meal. Action.
Action.
We're gonna add the meat with all of its juices back into this pan. We're gonna add the mushrooms that we sauteed earlier, the onions we sauteed earlier, and then we're gonna add all of the sauce. The juices from the meat are gonna thin out the sauce. You can kind of see how this is going. And while this is actually starting to mix up, heating up the water for the pasta. Okay, we're gonna cook the pasta. I always like to use a little bit of oil. It could be vegetable oil, any kind of oil, just to keep the pasta from sticking. Once it starts to boil, add the pasta. The pasta's done. Add it to the meat. I like the spiral pasta because it picks up lots of sauce. Depending on when you're gonna eat, this will hold for about an hour, and you can heat it back up when you're ready to eat. But if it gets too thick along the way, add a splash of milk, stir it up really good, and serve it, but enjoy. Grandma's recipe of beef stroganoff.